Hello and welcome to Cold Days, Dresden, book 14? This, like all of my Dresden videos after the first, 3, is spoilers. So, enjoy. Summer Night was one of my least favorite Dresden books. I think, let me pull up the tier list on Tier Maker. Oh, nope, didn't save my tier list. Well, that's unsurprising. I made that a long time ago. Shucks. The tier list got deleted, so I don't remember now, but I think Summer Night was one of my least favorite Dresden books. I think it's like bottom 3. So here we are back with the Fae Court, and oh no, it's awesome. I loved it. So the book starts off with Harry. It's now been discovered after the last book that he is not actually dead. In fact, he's just in this sort of coma. He's been captured by Mab. He didn't get free of being the Winter Knight. And now it's time to start our training montage, which includes a lot of evading death. It includes a lot of bad things and a birthday party. So getting a little bit of a closer look into the Fae world was both interesting and frustrating, which I'll explain a little bit more of in a second. But for the most part, as far as the world building of it all goes, it was so cool to see more of the inner workings, just a little bit of the inner workings of what's going on in the Fae world. And then when Harry finally does come out of that, the capture training situation that he's in, we also got to see once again how people have been faring without Harry in their lives. I loved the reintroduction he had with Molly, that she knew that he was going to be alive, so she just waited for him. She had clothes ready for him. She had a place to stay. She was like, let me just take care of you. And we also saw that she's in a lot better shape this time than she was last time. Naturally, for a lot of reasons, she would be in better shape this time. But we've seen her grow and mature a lot, and now she's just, because she knows he's coming back eventually, she's just like, let me be ready to make this as easy for him as possible. So I really liked that. I also really liked his introduction with Thomas, because I'm with him as far as Thomas's irritation when he didn't trust Harry at first, and then he's like, no, my brother would have called. My brother would have made sure to contact me and to let me know that he's still alive. Right? And Harry's like, I was kind of captured and evading death and being seduced constantly, and it was a tough time. And Thomas is like, I know Harry wouldn't have done that to me again. And I'm with him. After the last book, the amount of focus we spent on seeing how people were affected by Harry being dead and being gone, and for him to not even give Thomas a call, I'm just like, yeah, you deserve your anger. And then for Harry too, for Thomas's reaction when he realized that Harry would rather die than to be a little bit more like Thomas. That whole conversation I thought was really, really good. And, it's just more of Harry kind of being put in impossible situations and there not really being a good answer. And then we have to deal with the fact that there really wasn't a good answer for any of this. But also, even with that friction and even with the frustration that came with their situation, there's still the brotherly love. There's still the, I'll have your back no matter what. And, the hug. Thomas just bringing him in for a hug and just being like, they're still brothers no matter what. So I loved that as well. I also loved Thomas calling Harry out about while Harry being nervous about seeing his daughter is very reasonable, given what happened in Changes, and he's afraid that she'll remember how her mother died and hate Harry for it. And he doesn't know how to be a father. He hasn't been a father up to this point. He is willing to sacrifice his life for her. Absolutely, no problem. But he also recognizes that, I've not been her dad all this time. I can't just step into her life and be her dad, can I? And Thomas is like, well, you gotta figure that out real quick because she's gonna grow up. So, yeah, I think you might need to sort that one. And encouraged him, go try, make an effort. If it doesn't work at first, try some more. It will get easier. And I love that. I love that wisdom from Thomas because, one, I think he's right. Maggie's been through enough, and having someone in her life that would be loyal and dedicated to her and love her she deserves something. And I agree with him, even though Harry has a very good point as far as the trauma that she's endured and that he might be attached to that trauma in her memories, as far as the fact that he's constantly on the run and constantly in danger and there's so much risk going on around him. Does he really need to get her more involved with more chaos like that? He's right. So it's just another one of those situations where it's like, there's no perfect answer, but you do need to figure this out. And I appreciate Thomas kind of pressing him on that and being like, you need to figure it out soon. You don't need to put this one off because she will continue to grow. And if you're going to be a part of her life, you need to do it. So with Harry's reintroduction with Murphy as well, with all the key people, his reintroduction with Mouse, so sweet when Mouse was so excited to see him. So Harry is back in the human realm and he's back with the people in his life and he's seeing everyone again. But alongside of that, having the mantle, the Winter Night mantle on him also kind of turns him a little bit rapey on the inside. I mean, he has this desire to control, to be violent, to, I said it. He looks at women like he wants to destroy them. And Thomas calls it out in him. He's like, you're looking at Molly in some kind of way. You could talk to me about that. I understand these uncontrollable urges or seemingly uncontrollable urges that you have to force yourself to control. Like, I understand this instinctual desire that you hate about yourself and you try to figure out how to function in this life. We could have a conversation about this. And Harry is, someone who tries so hard to make the right decisions in his life, despite being put against having his back against the wall constantly. And in this situation, it's reducing him down to the mantle he's carrying, reduces him down to these base instincts and urges that seem to be akin with the Fae world in general. And he just has to, over and over and over again throughout this book, be confronted with those urges every time he sees a woman, essentially, every time he's like put in any sort of situation like this, and push it back and choose, still exert his free will, still choose to be who he wants to be. But I mean, that wears on a person. So the first half of this book for me was a weaker first half of a Dresden book. The first half of the book, I was enjoying myself. There was a lot that I liked about the book, but it wasn't anything that really stood out to me. It probably would have been in the lower half of the series for me, just because something that I consistently complain about with Dresden books, but not in reviews, I almost never complain about them in reviews, I just complain about them like on my Discord or to my friends, is that Butcher can be really repetitive with his writing. Like when he introduces something or when he reminds us of a conflict, he'll just use the same words over and over again. And part of it is, I'm reading the series one a month, so it's all very fresh for me. But even if a sentiment is repeated over and over again in the same book, the sentiment will just be said the exact same way. An example is this mantle and what it's doing to Harry internally. This conflict, each time it arises for him, it's just kind of stated in a very similar way over and over again. The conflict with Molly, her being in love with him, and him, she's a bombshell, just like her mom, but he's known her since she was in a training bra, just restated the same way over and over again. Same with the conflict with Murphy, same with introducing different people and items in his life. Even in the last book, Harry's internal turmoil and what he was working through, it was something, grieving and having to reel with the consequences of what you've done, what you've been forced to do, what you felt like you had to do, and processing all of that. Having those things repeatedly come up in a person is very realistic, but restating them in the same kind of way over and over again makes it for a less enjoyable reading experience. And that's something that just consistently I've noticed about these books. I just think Butcher could come up with different ways to express a similar sentiment. And I felt the same way about The Mantle. It was just like, okay, yep, no, I understand. I know exactly what Harry's feeling right now because I've read it 5 times already. I couple that with certain people thinking Harry was dead and then realizing that he's not, and people seeing him for the first time in a long time again and their reactions. They were different reactions, at least in this book, but it just seemed like a lot of the first half of this book was just rehashing things, and I just didn't, like, I enjoyed it. I know it sounds like I'm complaining really hard on the book, and I still enjoyed it. It just was weaker for me until we got into the second half of the book, and then it was amazing. So 2 major conflicts that were presented here at the beginning of the book. Demon Reach is about to explode, and that's real bad. I loved the scene when Harry realizes exactly what is being held in Demon Reach. Just like this horde of supernatural monsters, and and Merlin is responsible for all of this. And if there is an attack on Demon Reach, and if the failsafe is switched, and if Demon Reach explodes, then a huge chunk of the Midwest will too. Like, it's going to be detrimental. We do not want these creatures released. We do not want this failsafe attacked. We don't want this kind of destruction on the world. And Harry is now made into essentially the warden of, not essentially, he's directly called the warden of this island. So he's responsible for this prison. And if Harry is put in charge of protecting something, naturally that means that something must be attacked and attacked again and attacked again. So I loved seeing what was inside of Demon Reach and what all that contained, but I also really, really enjoyed learning more, which I mentioned this already in the video. I really, really enjoyed learning more about the way the Fae world works, specifically the way the Winter Court and the Summer Court, how their roles are so tangled together. The Winter Court exists to keep the outsiders from entering our world and protecting the outer gates. And the Summer Court exists to prevent the Winter Court from gaining too much power and control, from taking over the world, essentially. So it's such an interesting dynamic to have the Winter Court play this very essential role, but then the Summer Court is just as essential to keep the Winter Court in check. I thought that whole dynamic was fascinating, and I loved the expansion on their roles in this book. I thought the Outsiders and Nemesis were a really interesting conflict in this book. I thought the expansion on them too was great. And since they were performing the ritual to attack Demon Reach, and then they attacked Demon Reach, and Harry and his friends, primarily Murphy, fought against it and defended. I thought the scene where Harry shoots the Earl King and defeats Kringle, Santa Claus, and takes over the Wild Hunt so that he can lead them against the Outsiders. I thought that scene was super fascinating because, one, it was great. Like, the action in this series is always a blast to read, and it was just a phenomenal scene. But also, I thought it was so interesting that they essentially handed him that victory. Like, they wanted him to take control of the hunt. And then after that was done, then Lily and Maeve are attacking Demon Reach, and Harry has to deal with that. There we learn that Maeve can lie, in fact, which up to this point, we know that the fairies, the Fae, they have to tell the truth. They can work around the truth, so you have to really pay attention to their words. But Harry's like, okay, if she could be misinformed, but if she's saying something outright, then she believes it to be true. Except that she's been corrupted by Nemesis and she can lie. So Harry attacks her. She attacks back, she defeats him, and I will say that in this book, the role that a lot of the women played was fantastic. I thought that Maeve was an amazing antagonist. I always think Mab is an amazing antagonist, a very sickening and complex, seemingly complex character. But Murphy also played an amazing role in this. Molly too played a great role in this. I'm pretty sure this was the scene where when after Maeve attacked him and he was down and Murphy carried him out on her shoulder, and then they were hiding and had no hope. And so Harry shouts, "Mab, Mab, Mab," and summons Mab. And this whole scene, like I said, the second half of this book was great, but this whole sequence, I was freaking out as Maeve shot Lily, and then the Summer Court was transferred to Sarissa, her sister, and then Murphy shot Maeve. and the power moved to Molly. Molly is the new Winter Lady. Never did I ever expect this to come, and oh no. The conversation with Mab, I have a lot of thoughts on that, and I'll get to it in a second. I just want to real quick talk about this very last section here. The conversation between Harry and Mab was incredible after that, where she talks about her intentions and what her plans were. Harry makes her answer, did it hurt you to kill your daughter? Like, was that painful for you? Was that a problem for you? And she didn't want to answer at first. And then, let me see if I can find that quote. I was mortal too once, was her response to him before she walked away. Ah, that hit. And two, also in that whole sequence, Harry threatened to chain Mab up and put her in the crystal tunnels, the crystal caves under the island. And Mab's response to him threatening her was, finally, a knight who can challenge me, who's worth the trouble. A knight who's worth the trouble. So I feel like in this book, and in previous books, but in this book particularly, I saw a flash of humanity in Mab, a flash of attachment that she truly has, and something about that line has me wondering if her manipulating and, like, she chased after Harry, she tried to convince him to be the Winter Knight, and then she finally has him in her clutches. And I wonder if part of it is, you know, the evil, like, I just want to utilize your power, I want you to be the asset that I know that you could be, I want to control you. But I also wonder if part of it is almost like a failsafe of her own, of if Nemesis were to get a hold of her, if she were to be infected, that she realizes that Harry, finally she has a knight who is both willing and capable of killing her if it comes to that, if that's what's needed to be done. Anyway, the book ends with Harry staying on the island, and he's gonna see what this island has to hold, what demon reach, what he's gonna understand it more, as well as make a new staff for himself. So many thoughts about the repercussions of what has happened in this book. Molly is the Winter Lady. So, first of all, I'm thrilled because that's, like, what is this going to do? Like, what powers are we about to learn now that it's someone in our inner circle that's the Winter Lady? What more are we going to understand about the Fae Court, about, like, the Fae world, and what it entails to be the Winter Lady? Assuming we do get that, assuming Molly stays herself and stays in close relationship with Harry in, like, a positive way, and we get to learn. But it could go the other way. So it could either be extremely interesting because Molly has so much more self-control now, she's so much more mature, she's grown up, she's learned, she's had life experience, and she, like Harry, will be able to resist these urges and, you know, conduct herself in the best way possible in a otherwise impossible situation. Or it's going to corrupt her and everything's going to go bad. Molly became Harry's apprentice because she had too much power and not enough control, and it was horrible. Like, it had horrible results on people's lives. That's why Harry took her in, that's why he defended her against the council, and that's why we're in the situation we're in. Where we've left this book is Molly having way too much power, still potentially not enough control, and it could potentially ruin more lives, to include Harry's. It's been well established over and over again that she is still in love with him, and constantly, even in this book itself, where she's like, well, I mean, are you really forcing yourself on me if I'm offering myself to you? You can, I'm here I am. And he said no, because as we keep hearing over and over again, he's known her since she was in a training bra. She's his best friend's daughter, and I very much agree with his decision here, but also because she's in love with him and he's not in love with her, and it just wouldn't be fair to her. Well, now she has all this control, and now that she is the Winter Lady, she too has this mantle on her that includes being a seductress, and being, who knows what it includes, but we saw a taste of it in Maeve, as well as we've seen what Mab is like as the Winter Queen, with her mine ritual and all of that. So Molly now has a lot more power, and potentially what we've witnessed Harry dealing with this entire book, with what the mantle does to him, we're gonna see the same happen to Molly, maybe even more so. And she's less experienced, less trained, less mature, so it could corrupt her, and she could end up, Harry could be one of the people that she's harming now, in wanting to control him and having this possessiveness over him. And I mean, who knows? I mean, what if she even elevates to becoming the new Winter Queen? I'm nervous about her. I still am so protective over Sweet Molly. I still see her as a young girl. I know she's an adult now, but I still see her as just like someone who still needs a lot of counsel, and I just still want to take her under my wing. So I worry about her and what this new mantle is going to do to her. And I also worry that Butcher isn't going to tell me right away. I will say, I could see her losing herself and going down a dark path, and I could see it going poorly at first, but I could also see her being pulled back to center, and learning how to use this power and manage under this new world that she's in a way that would make Harry and Michael happy. Mac, I didn't mention him in this book, that he played a role. I think he might be an outsider. The outsiders work together, but I wonder if Mac is the one dissenting outsider that that lives in our world, or has been banished to our world, our reality. His line, his very simple, "I'm out," was like, potentially could be indicating that he's like, I'm out of this, you know, the outsiders versus humanity, this reality versus this reality. Like, he's done. I mean, I don't know. It's just a guess. From the discussions I've had on my Discord, it seems like this is like a top book for at least several Dresden fans, so I'm curious if it is for you as well. I don't think, at least in my first read through the series, I don't think I would put this in the top 3, top 4. It is definitely in the upper half of the series, especially with the second half of the book. I loved the second half of this book, but I don't know. I just think there are still other books that hit me a little bit harder. Although I do think that this gives us a pretty good peek into what maybe our endgame conflicts are going to be. So I think it's an essential book, and I think it was an excellent book, just maybe not one of my top ones. But I would love to hear from you. I know I don't talk about everything in these videos because there's so much to talk about in these books. I would love to hear what you thought about the book. I would love to hear where it ranks for you in your Dresden world. Please do chat with me more in the comments. I'll see you again soon. Bye.